So the reporting tells us that it will be largely interface changes. It will be some developer access to Apple's work in AI that will drive some innovation. How does that translate to the iPhone?
Absolutely, thank you, and it's nice to be here. I think those are, really still big steps. It's really important. It's going to help, even if there aren't really those big revolutionary announcements in AI. Those two things that you mentioned are going to help drive steps towards, moving Apple in the right direction, right? Like opening Apple's models to the developers, which they haven't done before, are going to create innovation, even if it's from the community and not, driven by Apple. I think that's a big step, and that's also an innovative step, even if it's different, right? And the changes to the operating system across platforms, I think that's also very important, and that's going to do two big things, right? One, it's going to give users a new experience, because the last time they did the design overhaul was especially with iOS a decade ago. And then two, it's going to unify the experience and increase the user stickiness. So if there are some potential users thinking to move over, it's going to make that even more difficult.
How do consumers respond to OS labeling? When it go from version iOS 17, 18 to year OS 26 point blah, 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 blah?
I think it's going to make it easier, right? It's before there was just so much confusion between the different platforms, and we see users using more
and when you say
devices.
Platforms, you mean iOS, macOS, etc.
Right, between different devices, right? We have more consumers having multiple devices, and it's harder to track what's the different version, even though consumers are not that much focused in terms of what's the software and what version it's on. It's going to make that much easier for the average consumer to follow, and we're used to that with other products, right? Other consumer products. So I think it's a really good move and simplifies things.
What's the kind of IDC must-watch list for today? What are the top 3 things that you want to hear from the company?
Well, I do, I know even though we're not going to get the big announcements around Apple Intelligence and that will appease the Apple AI critics, but I'm still eager to hear what the announcements will be around Apple Intelligence. I do still think they will address those to, signify that they are making those, even if they are smaller steps, that they are still pacing towards that, and they have not dropped the ball. So I think that's I'm eager to see that. I'm also eager to see what kind of design. We did hear some different, obviously, rumors about the design changes, about some liquid glass. So I'm very interested to see how that looks, because Apple, even though sometimes they make simple and small changes, it's always really brilliant. So I'm eager to see that.
There's some functionality discussion as well. Live translation in iMessage calls and through AirPods is something that we may hear about. But I also think about the discussions I've had quite recently with Meta, who have been working on this across different form factors of hardware. Google's been working on translation for a really long time. Apple's kind of catching up there.
Well, there's always, again, the critics are always going to be saying that, Android's had this for so and so many years, but we have to think about the ecosystem of Apple users. I mean, I have friends that the average Apple consumer doesn't really know what's been announced on Google I/O or Microsoft Build, or they don't really know. To them, it's their Apple universe, and to them, this is going to be revolutionary. And live translation is one of the biggest AI features that's been used. It's really popular in the, where it's, so to the Apple consumer, they're going to be really happy about that. And if that does get announced, it's going to be very well received.
Just really quickly, how uncertain is it right now for Apple, in particular the smartphone or iPhone context, with tariffs, etc.?
Of course, the tariff question. There is definitely a lot of uncertainty. But regardless of where the tariffs land, and despite the high uncertainty that we've seen, even you've seen with our latest forecast, we still expect a growth for Apple, because we've seen even with the pandemic, right? In times of high uncertainty, we see that the Apple consumer segment is still pretty resilient. So we still expect a low single-digit growth for Apple this year.